last one for today, local fonts in Acrobat. So this is something that is really basic again, but not very known either. So for the local fonts in Acrobat, this is actually a setting that you have in the preferences. I'll show you where afterwards. And what is this? And is it really bad? By default, Acrobat uses your local fonts. That means that this setting, use local fonts, is checked by default. It's again something that has been designed for the Office market, but is absolutely not something that we want as being part of the graphic arts market. Basically, what it does is when the use local font is on, if you have a file on screen in your Acrobat and the font is not embedded in the file, then Acrobat will just look in your machine to see if the font is there. And if the font is there, Acrobat will simply use it, which is totally perfect for Office because you want to be able to read the text and that's it. But in our market segment, we want to have the exact design of the font. We don't want to have another one that has been just, replacing the original one. So in that case, when the local font is on your machine, there's absolutely no way to see if you have a font problem in your file, because obviously you generated your file on your machine, so the font is on your machine. You make a PDF, you check it, you don't see any problem because Acrobat will use the font that is on your machine, and then you just take the file and send to the next person in the process. But that recipient, if that person doesn't have the same font on his machine, it will not see the same result. So this is that setting. It's again in the page display, and by default, it's checked. So after that webinar, you just have to open your Acrobat and have a look and see if this is the setting you have. Because if you didn't make that change yourself, this is what you have, and this is a huge problem. I will show you afterwards. So what you have to do is just uncheck, and then you're good to go. Let's see the example here. I have that font in that document, and this is how it should look like when it's printed. But actually, I can check this here. As you can see, that font is not actually embedded because the normal font that should be used is the curls empty. Because it's not in the file, it's replaced by another one normally. So here you see that the font that is used is the curls empty. But that's because Acrobat is looking at my machine. If I go to the preferences, and here I uncheck that box, I just changed that setting between the previous demonstration and here to make it wrong. And if I do this, this is what is the real thing. Because the font is not there, Acrobat doesn't find the font into the file, doesn't look on my machine. So what does it do? It just look here and say, oh, this is the font that should be used, but actually I couldn't find it. So I use one of these multiple master fonts. You know that Adobe has the Adobe Sans and the Adobe Serif multiple masters. And these are fonts where actually all of the metrics and the hints that David explained earlier can be changed and modified in many axes. So it just takes the same space as the font that you have, but of course the design of the font is completely different. So that means that if I take that file and I send that to one of you that doesn't have the curls empty font on his machine, this is what you're going to see. But again, if my Acrobat is just set up as the default, I will never know that the font wasn't embedded, and I have the feeling that this is correct. So actually, when the local font is on, when what I look here is exactly what I want, but this is wrong. This is not what is going to happen later in the process. If it's off, then it's not what I wanted, but this is exactly what the file is and what it will look like if you send that to somebody else later in the process.